We're going to talk about what I consider to be an upcoming threat to the iGaming industry, targeting your casino and sportsbook client database. Hi everybody, my name is Alex. Every week I will be talking about cybersecurity, upcoming threats to the iGaming industry, and information technology issues in general. I will also address any questions that you would like me to answer. My goal is to help you protect your company and assets from cybercrime and to improve your tech department by streamlining your work processes and improve your workflow. In this scenario, the target is the prized possession of an iGaming website, the player's email address. To achieve this, the attackers will be using farming attacks who are focused on manipulating a system rather than tricking individuals into going to a dangerous website. While the goal remains the same, getting the victim to end up on a compromised website, the mechanism to undertake it is completely different. To understand the strategy, we must first describe the method employed. It's called DNS Cache poisoning. Back in 2008, a researcher named Dan Kaminsky revealed one of the most severe internet security threats ever. A weakness in the domain name system that made it possible for attackers to send users to fake websites instead of real ones. This worked because authoritative name server information is cached into other servers. The cache is usually closest to the client requesting a domain name resolution. It's meant to speed up the replies and offload the authoritative server. DNS cache poisoning attacks were once popular, but were easily averted by randomizing the number of the port sending the request, also known as the source port. That port used was number 53. In November 2020, researchers at the University of Riverside revealed security flaws that could lead to the comeback of the DNS cache poisoning attack. This was done during the 2020 ACM SIGSAC conference. The attack succeeds by de-randomizing the source port and works on all layers of caches in the DNS infrastructure, such as forwarders and resolvers. The researchers found that 34% of the open resolvers on the internet are vulnerable, a figure that includes 85% of the most popular DNS services, including Google's 8.8.8.8 and Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1. The process used is the following. An attacker makes a DNS query to a resolver. Meanwhile, the authoritative DNS server is blocked by a DOS attack to prevent a response. The attacker will then flood the DNS resolver with tons of queries with fake answers, with all possible combinations of port numbers and transaction IDs. The attacker at the same time will spoof the IP address of the authoritative name server to make it look completely legitimate. The real IP address is then replaced by a fake one in the DNS cache. In this scenario, even if you type the correct domain name in the address bar of your web browser, you would end up on a clone of that website without even knowing it. Now, the target, in my opinion, would be, for example, the biggest website in one specific country. I would then hit them with a DNS poisoning attack. The client would type in a legitimate URL to go to his favorite casino, and he would automatically give away his email address and password to the attackers because his login process looks legitimate. Even if the attack is discovered within the next 20 minutes, the DNS cache would be compromised for the next 48 hours because of replication. During that period, the attacker would be able to collect the email addresses of thousands of your customers, making it worse if the attack is carried out during what is referred to in the gaming industry as payday. The email database of paying customers can then be sold directly to your competitors or over the dark web. To prevent such a scenario, I have a couple of recommendations for you. Number one, you should use DNSSEC, or Domain Name System Security, which will digitally sign the records exchanged with the DNS server. Number two, you should use a registry lock. If you're using a system like GoDaddy, for example, for your DNS, use registry lock. And use multi-factor authentication. All registered now offer this option, and it should be activated. Now, to mitigate an attack if it happens, I do have a few recommendations. I am a strong believer that if attackers target your website, your iGaming company, your casino, your sportsbook, and wish to steal your customer database, it's unavoidable, the attack will occur. A lot of damage can be done, so we have to see what we can do to limit the damage when it occurs. The first thing is that it's an industry standard, and in many other companies, not just in iGaming, that the email address is used as a username. The reason that was implemented was to have a unique identifier for your customer. And each client having a separate or different email address, it's the same thing as a fingerprint. It's unique. But that is also the problem, is that the email address is the method employed for communication with your client. So I would recommend not using an email address as a username for your client to log in to the player area. The system should automatically generate a username for him when he signs up, and that username should be random. It should be comprised, just like a password, of variables with numbers, letters, even special characters. And this special username, the user or the client should never be able to modify it. He can do a password reset, and of course we always have security standards when it comes to passwords, but his identifier as username should never be modified. And this will, in your backend, be linked to his email address, which you exclusively keep for communication purposes with your clients, such as the password reset. Now, the issue there is that the password reset should never be done exclusively with the player's email address. It should also be accompanied by multi-factor authentication. So a user that clicks on the reset password link should be able to put in his email address, or even better, put his randomly generated username. He will then get an email with a link to reset the password, and once he clicks on it, it would take him to a page where he first has to put in his multi-factor authentication code before being able to reset the password. In this scenario, even if the attackers get a hold of your customer email database, they would not be able to use it to do a password reset instead of your client. The survival of your business depends on how secure your DNS entries actually are. Now, if you visit my website, paradoxweb.com, I will post an article where I will list all of the references and the white paper published by the University of Riverside, so any system administrator or CTO of an iGaming company can actually access all the technical information and be aware of how these attacks are masterminded, and then work with his IT team on prevention. I thank you very much for watching. I will also be receiving some guests where we will have discussions on cybersecurity, and we will have some great recommendations for you to protect your business, to protect your profits, and also to protect your employees and their livelihood, because we all work as a team and we protect everybody in that team. Thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.